Fresh
This
dates
section
today. Come,
delves
come.
deep into the heart of
The
Sumerian
finest pottery
mythology
in all
and the
of Egypt.
profound way the ancient people personified the stars as members of a cosmic family. To the Sumerians, the stars were not distant points of light, but active, influential forces integral to the human experience. Each constellation and celestial body had a name, a story, and, most importantly, a familial relationship with humanity. The night sky was their home, a space not of void but of connection and purpose. We begin by exploring the Sumerian pantheon, where the gods were said to dwell in the heavens, their power reflected in the movements of the stars. Anu, the sky god, was the supreme deity who embodied the heavens themselves, and his offspring and followers, such as Enlil, the god of wind, and Inanna, the goddess of love and war, were often associated with specific celestial bodies. These gods were not abstract concepts, but characters in an ongoing narrative, each constellation symbolizing a divine presence that actively shaped life on Earth. The Sumerians saw their gods not as distant, unreachable figures, but as family members with whom they could engage in rituals, prayers, and stories. The stars were intimately tied to daily life, with each major constellation symbolizing an aspect of life, death, and renewal. For instance, Inanna's descent into the underworld mirrored the cycle of the seasons, and the stars were seen as both markers of time and guides to understanding the divine will. The Sumerians also attributed human-like qualities to the stars. They could be loving, vengeful, protective, or wrathful, just like any member of a family. They were seen as alive, speaking to those below with their movements and patterns. This perspective invites the viewer to reconsider the cold, impersonal nature of the universe often depicted in modern science, suggesting that, just as the Sumerians once did, we too may find a deeper, more personal connection to the cosmos if we embrace the idea of the stars as family. In a meditative tone, we reflect on how the Sumerians looked to the stars for answers to existential questions about love, death, fate, and the meaning of life itself. The night sky, for them, was not an abstraction but a reflection of their intimate relationship with the universe. The heavens were their mirror, their ancestors, and their eternal connection to something greater. This section ends by inviting the viewer to reflect on their own understanding of the cosmos. Do we, too, treat the stars as distant relatives, or have we become detached from that ancient connection? Can we still find a sense of kinship with the universe as the Sumerians did? Or have we become so entrenched in the mechanistic view of the world that we no longer see the heavens as family? The viewer is left to ponder how, in our modern age, we might rediscover a more intimate and spiritual relationship with the cosmos, just as the Sumerians once did. The section begins with a meditation on fragility. Human memory is fleeting, like footprints in sand, like words whispered into wind. Without preservation, stories dissolve, and silence returns. The Sumerians, perhaps more than any people before them, sought to resist this silence. They pressed reeds into soft clay, and in doing so, gave breath to thoughts that would outlive their bodies. Writing was not only an invention of necessity, but an act of cosmic defiance, a refusal to let memory vanish. We move into the origins of cuneiform. At first, the marks were simple: tallies, tokens of trade, symbols for sheep, grain, oil. But as the clay absorbed more impressions, the system expanded. Soon, the tablets carried hymns, myths, laws, star observations, prayers. The clay was earth, but it became voice. The Sumerians discovered that permanence could be made from the most ordinary material, mud hardened in the sun. What had once been ephemeral, thought, breath, spoken sound, became durable, something that could cross centuries. This act of writing is framed as a mirror of the stars themselves. Just as starlight travels across the abyss of time, so too do clay tablets carry the voices of the Sumerians into our present. Both are fragile, yet enduring. Starlight can be dimmed by clouds, yet it persists. A clay tablet can be broken, yet fragments still whisper their meaning thousands of years later. Writing and starlight are both forms of cosmic breath, ancient exhalations preserved against the pull of silence. The section then shifts to the emotional and philosophical implications of writing. To inscribe a thought into clay was to believe it mattered, that it might one day be read, that it might survive long enough to carry meaning into a future unseen. Writing was hope, an offering to eternity. The Sumerians wrote not only for themselves, but for those who would come after, for their children, their gods, their descendants, and unknowingly, for us. We reflect on the paradox of writing, that it both preserves and distances. A spoken word is alive, warm, full of presence. But on clay, the word is frozen, removed from its speaker. It endures, but at the cost of its breath. This paradox is mirrored in the cosmos. Stars, too, are both present and absent. Their light is real, visible, guiding us. Yet each point we see is already old, a relic of the past. Writing and stars alike remind us that memory is never entirely present. It always arrives from another time. From here, the narrative returns to the Sumerian context. Their tablets carried astronomical records, observations of Venus, the movements of the moon, omens in the stars. Priests and scribes recorded these patterns not only to predict harvests, but to align themselves with the cosmos. Each mark in clay was a gesture of harmony with the universe, a way of writing the stars back into the earth. The section then contrasts permanence with impermanence. The human body withers, cities crumble, dynasties dissolve. But clay, like stone, can endure. Uruk was a city of walls and canals, of marketplaces and temples, of voices rising in the daylight. By day, it was filled with the rhythm of labor, the call of merchants, the splashing of water carried in clay jars. Dust drifted in the heat, and the hum of life carried through the streets. Yet, when the sun sank behind the horizon and the fires of the homes grew dim, something greater revealed itself. Above the noise of the day stretched the silence of eternity. The sky unfolded vast and luminous, its stars more numerous than the souls within the city walls. The city became small again, reduced to a flicker beneath a canopy without measure. It was in this silence that Uruk lived most fully. For the people of Sumer, night was not an emptiness. It was a gathering. Each star was a presence, each planet a voice, each slow-moving light a messenger. The heavens were not remote. They leaned close, like companions seated around a hearth. And though Uruk was built of brick and earth, it seemed to rise into dialogue with the infinite. The city's highest ziggurat reached upward like a stairway, its terraces aligned with the constellations. Priests climbed its steps to read the heavens, as if the tower itself was listening. Among the stars, one in particular carried the deepest meaning for Uruk, Venus. Bright in the evening, radiant before dawn, it was no ordinary light. To the Sumerians, she was Inanna, goddess of love and fertility, of desire and of war. She was the patron goddess of Uruk, the very heart of the city. When she appeared low on the horizon, shimmering like a jewel, the people knew Inanna was near. Her presence meant beauty, vitality, and the promise of renewal. But when she vanished, sinking into the unseen, her absence was mourned. Her disappearance marked a descent into mystery, just as her myth spoke of journeys into the underworld. Her return, blazing once more in the night sky, was celebrated as a resurrection. Inanna's dual nature reflected the duality of Venus itself. As evening star, she was gentle, a luminous sister guiding the end of the day. As morning star, she was fierce, a warrior who rose before the sun to announce both struggle and triumph. To live in Uruk was to live with her cycles, her comings and goings, her absences and returns. The life of the city was interwoven with her rhythm. The goddess was not a distant idea but a light in the sky, a presence both visible and intimate. Around her, the moon rose and fell, carrying the name of Nanna, steady father of the night. His phases marked time, his glow reflected on the canals, silvering the waters that sustained the city. The sun, Utu, strode faithfully across the day, warming the fields, blessing the workers, bringing light to the bricks and towers. The stars, too, each one belonged to a constellation with a story, an omen, a song. The sky above Uruk was alive with divine company. And so, the people of Uruk did not separate their daily lives from the heavens. A farmer, pausing after a long day of tending fields, could look upward and feel himself accompanied. A mother, singing to her child, could whisper the names of the gods and the stars, soothing with both lullaby and prayer. A priest, marking Venus's path on a clay tablet, was not only making an observation but writing a dialogue between earth and sky. The stars belonged to everyone, the poor as well as the powerful, the child as well as the priest. The ziggurat rising from the heart of the city was more than a building. It was a meeting point of realms, a human-made mountain intended to reach toward the heavens. Its steps led upward to terraces where the watchers of the sky stood, observing the wanderings of the planets, listening for the messages hidden in their rhythms. To climb its heights was to ascend into thinner air, closer to the realm of the gods. Its very structure was a mirror of the cosmic order, brick echoing star, earth echoing heaven. The contrast was constant. By day, Uruk was a place of commerce and survival, rooted in the soil. By night, it was a place of contemplation and wonder, rooted in the stars. The people shifted effortlessly between the two, seeing no contradiction between earth and sky. Their lives were not divided into secular and sacred, into human and cosmic. Everything was interwoven. The mud beneath their feet and the lights above their heads were part of the same fabric, the same great family. And in this interwoven life, they found comfort. The city might feel overwhelming with its crowds and its endless demands, but the night sky offered perspective. The stars whispered of endurance. They had shone long before the first brick was laid. They would shine long after walls crumbled. Yet, in their constancy was not indifference, but familiarity. The stars the people of Uruk looked upon are the same stars we see tonight. Their light bound past and present, reminding every observer of continuity, of belonging to something greater than themselves. To walk through Uruk at night was to move through two worlds at once, the earthly city and the cosmic city above. Fires glowed in courtyards, but beyond them shone fires that never dimmed. A child could fall asleep to the hum of voices within the walls and the quiet presence of eternity above them. Priests, watching from their towers, recorded the cycles, weaving knowledge into clay. Families, from rooftops and courtyards, watched with wonder, weaving the same cycles into memory. And so, the sky above Uruk was not empty. It was full of gods, of ancestors, of lessons, of stories. Full of comfort, full of awe. To the people of Sumer, the stars were not distant, silent objects. They were kin. They were woven into the very heart of the city, as alive as the people who walked its streets. To remember Uruk is to remember this union of earth and sky, of brick and starlight, of human voices and cosmic silence. The city, for all its grandeur, was only one half of existence. The other half, luminous and eternal, spread above it. Together, they formed a whole, a harmony of human striving and cosmic order. Uruk rose high, but never higher than the stars that guided it. And in that harmony lay the truth the Sumerians lived by, that the city, the people, the gods, and the heavens were one family. A family gathered not only on earth but across the sky. A family whose stories would echo long after Uruk's walls had fallen, carried still in the quiet voices of the stars. The section opens by inviting the listener to imagine the night sky as the first cathedral, a living temple without walls or ceiling. For the Sumerians, the stars were not distant or indifferent. They were deities embodied in light. To name the gods was to name the stars, and to name the stars was to speak to family. The narrative begins with the pantheon. Inanna as Venus, Utu as the sun, Nanna as the moon, Anu as the overarching sky. Each celestial body was both physical presence and divine personality. Unlike abstract gods removed from daily life, these deities appeared every day and every night. They rose, moved, disappeared, and returned. The sky was their theater, and humanity was never excluded from the performance. We linger on the intimacy of this worldview. The gods were not remote creators. They were kin who walked alongside humanity. Inanna's brilliance reflected passion and change. Utu's daily rising carried faithfulness. Nanna's slow phases mirrored cycles of growth and decline. The listener is reminded that, to the Sumerians, the stars did not merely govern fate. They shared in life's rhythms. They were born, vanished, and returned, just as humans lived, died, and were remembered. The section then contrasts this mythic intimacy with modern scientific detachment, where we see stars as hydrogen furnaces burning light years away. The Sumerians saw them as relatives with faces, voices, and temperaments. The contrast is not meant to belittle science, but to suggest that myth carried its own truth, an emotional and relational truth that preserved humanity's sense of belonging to the cosmos. Science explains, but myth embraces. The story then turns to ritual. Priests interpreted celestial patterns not simply as omens, but as divine conversations. The rising of a certain star at dawn might signal abundance, while its disappearance could mean famine or war. These interpretations were not random. They were rooted in long observation, in patient tracking of celestial order. The line between astronomy and theology was thin, and both were part of the same search for meaning. The section expands into how families engaged with this worldview. A child might be told that their birth was blessed by Inanna if Venus shone bright that night. A traveler might set out under the guidance of Nanna's full light. Entire cities marked festivals according to the sun's position, aligning civic life with cosmic cycles. The stars were not distant backdrop, but active family, woven into every season, every ritual, every hope. From here, the narration introduces the paradox of divinity, that the gods were both eternal and fragile. Eternal because the stars seemed unchanging, always returning. Fragile because their absence could terrify, their disappearance could feel like death. This paradox reflected human life itself, and in it, the Sumerians found kinship. Their gods, like themselves, moved through cycles of loss and return. The night sky became a mirror of the human heart. The narrative lingers on Inanna once more, as her myth exemplifies this cosmic human bond. Her descent into the underworld mirrored Venus's disappearance from the sky. Her triumphant return reflected its reappearance. Myths like these were not arbitrary stories, but poetic explanations of real celestial rhythms. In telling them, the Sumerians preserved both scientific observation and emotional meaning. Myth was their language for science, and science their tool for myth. The section closes in reflective stillness. To look at the stars for the Sumerians was to look at family. To name a constellation was to call upon kin. In their worldview, no human was ever alone beneath the night sky. The heavens themselves were filled with relatives, gods, and companions who spoke through their cycles. And perhaps, the narration suggests, this intimacy is something we have lost. We see stars as distant objects. Yet to remember the Sumerians is to remember that they can still be kin. Even in our scientific age, their light continues to whisper, asking us to see them not as strangers, but as family, watching from above. The section opens with an image of quiet patience. Night after night, Sumerian priests and scholars looked upward, recording the heavens. They were not astronomers in the modern sense, but they carried the same spirit: careful observation, reverence for pattern, devotion to truth hidden in cycles. The narration emphasizes the discipline of watching, the act of sitting in silence, waiting for the stars to reveal their order. The outline moves into the practices themselves. From high terraces of ziggurats, observers track the movement of Venus, the moon, and the great wandering stars we now call planets. They noted eclipses, conjunctions, risings, and settings, sometimes predicting when a celestial body would disappear and return. Over time, their records grew into vast archives, making the Sumerians among the first people in history to map the heavens with systematic care. The narrative lingers on the paradox of their method. Their science was inseparable from myth, yet within the myths lay the seeds of modern astronomy. When they said that Inanna had descended into the underworld, they were also describing Venus disappearing from the dawn sky. When they spoke of Nanna's face waxing and waning, they were carefully tracking the lunar cycle. Myth was the poetry, but observation was the rhythm beneath it. From here, the section broadens into the cultural importance of these observations. Astronomy was not a detached hobby. It was bound to survival, governance, and ritual. Knowing when the rivers would flood, when crops should be planted, when seasons would shift, all depended on celestial knowledge. The priests were not only guardians of myth, but guardians of calendars, the keepers of time itself. The narration deepens into the idea of time. By measuring the heavens, the Sumerians began to measure life. Days, months, years, all flowed from their attention to the stars. The very act of dividing time into units was born from their celestial devotion. To watch the sky was to build the architecture of civilization itself. Without astronomy, no organized calendar, no agriculture on such scale, no great city life could have flourished. The story then introduces the role of omens. Astronomy and astrology were not yet separate. Every eclipse was both a measurable event and a divine message. Predictions carried weight in political decisions, wars, and coronations. Kings depended on these watchers of the sky, trusting their knowledge to guide both daily life and matters of empire. The astronomer was at once scientist, priest, and prophet. The section contrasts their patient methods with our modern speed. Today, we can model orbits and predict eclipses centuries in advance with mathematics and computers. The Sumerians had only their eyes, their memory, and their clay tablets. Yet from these humble tools, they derived astonishing accuracy. They could predict Venus's return, recognize repeating patterns, and understand that celestial cycles were reliable. Their gift was not technology, but patience. The narration then zooms in on the human element. Imagine the astronomer, alone on the ziggurat at night, cold wind across the plain, a reed stylus in hand. His task is not only to write, but to listen. He knows that what he records will shape the lives of thousands, perhaps even save them. Each star he notes is both a divine whisper and a scientific datum. His silence is filled with responsibility, reverence, and hope. The section begins to close by reflecting on legacy. These were the first astronomers, not because they separated science from religion, but because they saw no need to. For them, the cosmos was one fabric. Myth, science, time, fate, survival, all threads of the same tapestry. In watching the stars, they created both stories and data, both gods and cycles. And from this fusion, the science of the heavens was born. The narration ends in stillness. The stars continue their patterns, as they always have. The Sumerians are gone. Their cities long crumbled, but their observations remain. They remind us that astronomy began not in laboratories, but in silence, with human eyes lifted to the night. In that sense, every modern astronomer, every stargazer, is kin to those ancient watchers, sharing the same wonder that began on Sumerian nights beneath the sky. The section opens with the calming rhythm of recurrence. The Sumerians did not see the heavens as chaos, but as an ordered dance. The stars rose, the sun returned, the moon waxed and waned, and Venus disappeared, only to shine again. Each cycle reassured them that life itself was part of a vast, repeating pattern. The narration emphasizes this comfort. Nothing was random, all was rhythm. From this stillness, the outline moves into detail. The lunar cycle, tracked with care, became the heartbeat of Sumerian timekeeping. The phases of the moon structured months, which guided planting, harvesting, and ritual. Venus's cycle, with its striking brilliance and mysterious disappearances, became central to myth and prophecy. The predictable risings of constellations marked seasons, offering both practical and spiritual guidance. The narration deepens into the significance of repetition. To see cycles was to find security in impermanence. The moon's vanishing was not death, but transition. Venus's absence was not loss, but descent into the underworld, with the certainty of return. By embedding these celestial patterns into story, the Sumerians transformed fear into reassurance. Every ending became a beginning. Every disappearance carried the promise of return. The story broadens into the earthly reflections of these cycles. The flooding of the Tigris and Euphrates, which nourished crops, followed its own rhythm. The migration of animals, the growth of reeds, the changing of seasons, all echoed the sky above. For the Sumerians, heaven and earth were mirrors. To understand one was to understand the other. Their agriculture, festivals, and even laws were tied to the recognition that life was cyclical, not linear. The section contrasts this worldview with modern perceptions. Today, time often feels like a straight line rushing forward. But the Sumerians lived in cycles, in returning patterns. Their comfort lay in knowing that what has gone will come again. The narration suggests that perhaps this cyclical vision is more soothing, more aligned with nature's truths than our modern linear rush. The outline then zooms into ritual. Festivals marked celestial cycles, the new moon, the equinox, the heliacal rising of stars. These were not abstract observances, but communal acts of synchronization with the cosmos. The people danced, feasted, prayed, and sang, aligning their bodies and cities with the rhythms of heaven. Life itself became a mirror of the stars. The narration highlights the emotional core. Cycles brought meaning to suffering. Just as the moon grew dark but always returned, so too could hope return after despair. The myth of Inanna's descent carried this promise. To witness celestial cycles was to learn resilience, to trust that even loss was temporary. The Sumerians' myths were not merely explanations of nature. They were lessons in endurance, patience, and renewal. The section then reflects on how this worldview shaped identity. The Sumerians did not see themselves as separate from the cosmos, but as participants in its cycles. Their lives were threads in the same fabric, woven into the dance of sun and stars. To live was to take part in a cosmic rhythm that preceded them and would continue after them. This gave life both humility and grandeur. The narration closes in stillness. The stars turn. The moon waxes and wanes. The earth floods and dries, grows and rests. And so do we. The Sumerians, in seeing cycles of heaven and earth, found belonging in an eternal rhythm. Their voices whisper across time, reminding us that nothing is ever truly lost. Only turning, only returning. To sleep beneath their sky was to trust the music of cycles, an ancient lullaby of recurrence. The section opens with the vast stillness of the night sky, scattered with points of light. For the Sumerians, these stars were not random. They were living presences, gods woven into constellations. The narration introduces the idea that to look at the heavens was to look upon the divine itself, stretched across the fabric of darkness. The outline moves into detail. Each major god had a celestial reflection. Inanna, radiant as Venus, Utu, embodied in the daily rising of the sun, Nanna, cycling through phases of the moon, and the sky itself. The constellations were not abstract maps, but family portraits, a celestial genealogy written above their heads. To trace the stars was to trace the stories of divine kinship, rivalry, and love. The narration expands on how these myths explain celestial behavior. When Venus vanished into the horizon, it was Inanna descending into the underworld. When the moon thinned into darkness, it was Nanna retreating, only to be reborn. Constellations told stories of battles, marriages, and journeys, reflecting both the heavens and the struggles of human life. The sky was thus not cold or distant. It was intimate, familial, alive. The section contrasts the Sumerian sky with our modern one. Today, we see constellations as shapes, navigational aids, or symbols of the zodiac. For the Sumerians, the constellations were personal. They were kin, protectors, guides. To look at the stars was to feel accompanied, never alone. Even the darkest nights were filled with the presence of divine watchers. The narration deepens into the cultural function of these beliefs. Constellations oriented not only navigation and calendars, but also morality and ritual. A star's appearance might signal a festival, a harvest, or a political decision. Myths embedded in the stars became guides for human conduct. The sky was a cosmic text, its stories written in light. The section then lingers on the emotional resonance. To see the gods above was to live under their gaze, to feel held within a larger order. The heavens became both temple and scripture, a vast sanctuary open to all eyes. The constellations were not remote abstractions, they were companions. Their permanence offered comfort. Even when human lives ended, the divine family remained overhead. From here, the narration broadens into philosophy. By mapping gods onto stars, the Sumerians enacted a kind of cosmic intimacy, collapsing the distance between heaven and earth. Humans were not beneath an indifferent sky, but within a living, familial cosmos. This intimacy blurred the boundaries between myth and science, between observation and worship. The constellations were the intersection where the measurable and the meaningful met. The section closes gently, inviting reflection. The gods woven into constellations were not merely stories, but reminders that we are part of something vast and interconnected. The Sumerians, by inscribing family and divinity onto the night sky, gave themselves, and us, a way to belong to the universe. When we look up, even now, we might still hear their voices whispering. The stars are not strangers, they are family. The section opens with silence before a storm. For the Sumerians, the sky was not only a sanctuary of order, but also a canvas of messages. Every unusual event, an eclipse, a comet, a sudden alignment, was a sign. The narration sets the stage by contrasting the calm of predictable cycles with the trembling awe of anomalies. To them, nothing in the heavens was meaningless. The outline moves into the practice of omen reading. Sumerian scholars and priests kept detailed records of celestial phenomena, not only tracking their timing, but interpreting their meaning. An eclipse might foretell danger to a king. A sudden bright star could announce a shift in power. These interpretations were gathered into vast collections of omen texts, where the heavens spoke in a symbolic language that had to be read with care. The narration broadens into the role of power. Kings and rulers depended on these readings, consulting astronomer priests before battles, treaties, or public works. The sky was thus not only a calendar, but a political advisor. Decisions that shaped empires rested on the interpretation of stars. To misread an omen could mean famine, defeat, or chaos. The section deepens into the psychology of omens. To live under such a sky was to feel watched and guided, but also vulnerable. The heavens could bless or curse. A lunar eclipse was not simply a shadow, but a trembling moment of uncertainty, a reminder that the order of the cosmos could bend. The narration explores how this gave life both weight and fragility. Every action seemed part of a larger cosmic drama. The story contrasts this with modern science. Today, we know eclipses as predictable shadows, comets as icy wanderers, planets as orbiting bodies. Yet even now, when something unusual streaks across the sky, we feel a flicker of that ancient awe. Our rational minds may dismiss omens, but our hearts still respond with wonder and unease, echoing Sumerian instincts. The narration then introduces a deeper reflection. Omens were not just superstition. They were attempts to find meaning in anomaly, to weave even the unpredictable into the fabric of life. To see a sign in the heavens was to believe the universe was speaking, that human lives were not isolated, but entangled with cosmic will. It was an attempt to translate chaos into message, fear into guidance. The section lingers on the beauty of this worldview. Imagine standing in ancient Sumer, watching a lunar eclipse unfold. The shadow creeps across the moon, turning it blood red. The city grows silent. People pray, cry out, wait for the priest's words. In that shared stillness, the community feels the heavens close. The omen binds them together, reminding them of their smallness and their connection to something vast. The narration closes in quiet reflection. Omens written in the sky may no longer dictate our kings or wars, but they remind us of a timeless truth. We seek meaning in the unknown. The Sumerians gave voice to this longing by treating the heavens as language. And even now, when we gaze at a meteor shower or an eclipse, we may still whisper inwardly, what does it mean? The section begins with the image of timelessness. Before the Sumerians, time was the rising sun, the returning moon, the growth of crops, but it was fluid, unmeasured, a cycle felt but not divided. The Sumerians, gazing at stars, asked a daring question. Could this vast rhythm be captured, marked, and measured? Could the heavens not only guide life, but define it in units that could be spoken, recorded, and shared? The narration moves into the lunar calendar. The phases of the moon became months, their waxing and waning shaping the earliest system of recorded time. Priests and scribes aligned religious rituals, agricultural practices, and even political duties to the moon's turning face. Life began to follow a schedule, no longer only guided by instinct, but by celestial record. The story expands into the solar year. The rising of constellations at dawn announced the seasons. The floodwaters of the rivers, the planting of barley, the harvest of dates, all these events were synchronized with celestial patterns. The Sumerians became timekeepers of both sky and earth, harmonizing their survival with the rhythm of the cosmos. The narration shifts into the invention of numerical systems. To divide time, the Sumerians used the sexagesimal system, base 60. From this came the 60-minute hour, the 360-degree circle, and the structured divisions that still govern our clocks and maps today. The heavens inspired not only myth and ritual, but mathematics, embedding the cosmos into the logic of daily life. The section deepens into reflection on control and vulnerability. To measure time was to tame it, to bring order to chaos. Yet it was also a recognition of dependence. Every calendar was fragile, always in need of adjustment, always vulnerable to anomalies. The Sumerians lived in a delicate balance, both masters of time and servants to its celestial rhythms. The narration broadens to philosophy. To invent timekeeping was to change the human relationship with existence itself. Once time could be measured, it could be planned, divided, recorded. Life was no longer only an unfolding present, but a sequence of past, present, and future. Memory and anticipation grew sharper. The stars had given humanity not only stories, but history, not only myth, but destiny. The section contrasts ancient and modern experience. We still live by their inheritance. Our hours, minutes, calendars, and seasons are Sumerian in origin. Yet where they saw sacred cycles, we often see only schedules and deadlines. The narration gently wonders whether something was lost in the transformation, whether time, once divine, has become too mechanical. The section closes softly with the image of the night sky as the original clock face. The stars turning overhead, the moon waxing and waning, the sun rising and setting. This was the first clock, vast and eternal. The Sumerians, in capturing its rhythm, gave us the framework of time itself. And though our modern clocks tick endlessly forward, the heavens still whisper the older truth. Time is a circle, not a line, and we live within its endless turning. The section begins with an image of stone and brick rising from flat plains, reaching toward the sky. The Sumerians did not simply build structures for shelter. They built monuments designed to echo the heavens. Their ziggurats, stepped towers of clay and stone, were not only places of ritual, but embodiments of the link between earth and sky. To climb their terraces was to ascend, symbolically, into the realm of the gods. The narration then moves into the sacred architecture itself. Each temple was dedicated to a deity whose celestial body ruled the heavens. The great ziggurat of Uar honored Inanna, the moon god. Temples to Utu aligned with the sun's path. Architecture became astronomy, alignments and orientations designed to connect human ritual with the rhythm of the stars. The story expands into the philosophy behind these structures. To the Sumerians, the gods were not confined to the heavens. They required earthly dwellings. By constructing these temples, Humans provided resting places for celestial beings, ensuring balance between divine order and mortal life. The physical structures embodied the belief that the cosmos itself was a house, a dwelling with the heavens as its roof and the earth as its floor. The narration deepens into ritual practice. Priests ascended the ziggurats not to escape earth, but to meet the divine halfway. At the summit, offerings were made under open skies, prayers rising with smoke to merge with the constellations. These acts bound the community not only to the gods, but to the larger rhythm of stars and time, turning architecture into a bridge across worlds. The section contrasts the permanence of the heavens with the fragility of clay. Ziggurats weathered, crumbled, sank back into the earth. Yet the stars they mirrored remained constant. The narration lingers on this tension, humans striving to give form to eternity with impermanent hands. The ruins we see today are broken fragments of that ancient attempt to catch the infinite in brick and stone. The narrative then broadens into the emotional dimension. To stand before a ziggurat was to feel the presence of the cosmos made tangible, to sense that the universe itself could be touched, ascended, experienced physically. The architecture reassured people that they were not merely subjects of the heavens, but participants in its unfolding order. The section reflects on continuity. From Mesopotamian ziggurats to Egyptian pyramids, from Mayan temples to Gothic cathedrals, the impulse to build skyward structures has never left humanity. Each is an attempt to translate the immensity of the cosmos into something human-scaled, something that can be entered, climbed, and inhabited. The Sumerians began this long tradition of turning worship into architecture, astronomy into geometry, wonder into stone. The section closes softly, reminding us that the stars themselves need no temple, yet humanity continues to build them. Perhaps it is because the act of building, like the act of stargazing, is a form of prayer. The Sumerians, in shaping their temples as mirrors of heaven, gave us a blueprint not just of architecture, but of longing. The eternal desire to bridge the earth beneath our feet with the infinite sky above. The section begins in the stillness of night. When cities slept, the priests of Sumer remained awake, eyes fixed on the sky. They were called Baru and Upper Enuma Anu Enlil, diviners and scribes of the heavens. Their task was not only observation, but translation. They turned the silent movements of stars into words, omens, and guidance for kings and common people alike. The narration moves into their method. From high platforms or temple rooftops, they charted the positions of constellations, phases of the moon, and wanderings of planets. They recorded anomalies with meticulous care, inscribing on clay tablets not just data but interpretations. If Mars glowed red in a certain constellation, it was an omen of war. If Venus vanished into the sun's light, it foretold change in leadership. Every light in the sky was both number and symbol. The story expands into their role in society. Priests were advisors, not mere observers. Kings relied on their readings before battles, marriages, treaties, and religious ceremonies. Farmers turned to them for guidance on planting seasons. The community depended on their ability to decipher the heavens, and so they became figures of both reverence and fear. Their knowledge carried weight, for to misinterpret an omen could have consequences measured in famine or war. The narration deepens into the discipline itself. The priests' work combined observation, mathematics, and mythology. They did not see science and religion as separate. To them, counting the stars was worship, and worship was calculation. Their writings became some of humanity's first scientific records, blending myth with proto-astronomy in a way that shaped later civilizations, including Babylonian, Greek, and even modern astronomy. The section reflects on their burden. To stand beneath the stars was to feel both awe and responsibility. The heavens seemed to speak, but their language was ambiguous. Priests were interpreters of silence, translators of patterns that never explained themselves. The narration lingers on this tension, the certainty of mathematics against the uncertainty of meaning. To read the heavens was to balance between clarity and mystery. The narrative broadens into emotional resonance. Imagine being one of these watchers of the sky, standing alone on a ziggurat at night, the city sleeping below, the constellations wheeling above. You are both small and immense, a fragile human tasked with carrying the weight of divine messages. To such a figure, every flicker of light carried consequence. Every change in the sky felt like the whisper of a god. The section closes in quiet reflection. The priests of Sumer are gone, their clay tablets crumbled, their names forgotten. Yet their legacy remains. Every modern astronomer, every scientist charting planets and stars, inherits something of their task. For though we no longer read omens in the sky, we still seek meaning in its silence. The heavens remain, and we remain their interpreters, reaching for patterns in the infinite. The section begins with the idea that, for the Sumerians, the cosmos was not empty. It was inhabited, alive, and intimate. The stars and planets were not distant or indifferent, but family members in a vast divine household. To look up at the sky was to gaze upon the living faces of the gods, each with relationships, tempers, and stories that intertwined with the destinies of humankind. The narration moves into the central figures. At the foundation stood Un, the sky god, vast and remote, the father of the heavens. Beside him was Ki, the earth. Their union gave birth to Enlil, the storm god who brought both fertility and destruction. Enki, god of water and wisdom, governed the subterranean abyss. Inanna, the moon, and Utu, the sun, illuminated the world. Inanna, radiant as Venus, embodied love, war, and transformation. The Sumerian pantheon was less a hierarchy than a family drama, with rivalries, alliances, and shifting moods. The story expands into the way these divine figures embodied celestial bodies. Each god was more than metaphor. They were the star itself, the planet itself. When Venus disappeared into the sun's glare, it was Inanna descending into the underworld. When the moon waxed and waned, it was Inanna cycling through phases of strength and retreat. Myth was not separate from astronomy. It was astronomy made human, relational, and story-filled. The narration deepens into the human meaning of this cosmic family. To call the stars kin was to place humanity within the same household. The gods were distant but not unreachable. They shared in human struggles, desires, and conflicts. People turned to them for guidance and comfort because they reflected the very emotions of human life. To watch the heavens was to witness a celestial mirror of one's own family, complete with quarrels, reconciliations, and long arcs of destiny. The section reflects on how this worldview created intimacy with the infinite. The night sky was not an alien expanse, but a gathering of relatives. The Sumerians felt themselves participants in a cosmic household where gods, stars, and mortals belonged together. To sacrifice, to pray, to observe the heavens was to tend to family ties, not abstract worship, but kinship. The narrative broadens into cultural continuity. This vision of the cosmos as family influenced later civilizations. The Babylonians inherited these gods and wove them into their own myths. The Greeks reinterpreted them as Olympians. Even today, we speak of the family of planets, echoing this ancient impulse to humanize the infinite. The Sumerians gave the sky not only names, but relationships, stories that endure in hidden forms across cultures. The section closes in quiet wonder. To think of the stars as family is to dissolve loneliness. In the silent dark, the Sumerians looked upward and did not feel small, but connected. The gods watched them, quarreled over them, blessed and cursed them, just as relatives do. And though thousands of years have passed, the thought lingers. Perhaps the stars are still our kin, waiting for us to remember their ancient names. The section begins with an acknowledgement of loss. The cities of Sumer have fallen to dust, their temples collapsed, their languages long silent. What remains is broken, fragments of clay tablets, scattered inscriptions, faint echoes of voices once lifted in prayer to the stars. The silence of those ruins stands in contrast to the living, noisy world that once surrounded them. The narration moves into the survival of story. From those fragile fragments, we have pieced together myths and hymns, astronomical records and poems. The Epic of Gilgamesh still whispers of mortality and yearning. The hymns to Inanna still shimmer with devotion. The star charts still mark the heavens as they once appeared to priests thousands of years ago. Though silence reigns where cities once stood, story endures, fragile yet indestructible. The story expands into the paradox of forgetting and remembering. So much has been lost: names, meanings, entire libraries of knowledge. Yet what survives carries an outsized weight, shaping later civilizations. Babylonian astronomy inherited Sumer's sky maps. Greek philosophy inherited their questions of order and chaos. Modern science still stands on ground first, tilled by Sumerian hands. Silence is vast, yet story crosses its distances like light across the void. The narration deepens into reflection. Human beings are creatures of memory, but memory is never complete. What we carry forward are fragments, half-remembered echoes, shards of once whole worlds. And yet, those fragments are enough. They allow us to imagine, to reconstruct, to bring the Sumerians back to life in our minds. In silence, we become storytellers, filling the spaces left by time with wonder. The section reflects on the emotional inheritance. To read a hymn written 5,000 years ago is to feel the presence of another human being across millennia, their voice soft but steady, their concerns not so different from ours: love, death, meaning, place in the cosmos. The silence of time does not erase the intimacy of this connection, it deepens it. The gaps between fragments invite us to lean closer, to listen harder. The narrative broadens into continuity. Every culture inherits silence and story in turn. Just as the Sumerians once looked back to unknown ancestors, so we look back to them. And one day, far in the future, others will look back at us, sifting through our fragments, wondering who we were, what we believed, how we named the stars. Silence will claim us too, but story may yet endure. The section closes softly, like a lullaby. Silence and story are not enemies, but companions. Silence preserves, waits, holds. Story flickers, crosses gaps, carries memory forward. Together, they are the inheritance of all humanity, the quiet of ruins, the whispers of myth, the steady glow of stars still shining above, just as the Sumerians once saw them. The section begins with the enduring presence of the night sky. Long after empires fall, after languages fade, after temples sink into the earth, the stars continue to shine. They are the constant companions of humanity, watched by the Sumerians, watched by us, and destined to be watched by generations yet unborn. The narration moves into the thought of kinship. The Sumerians spoke of the stars as family, brothers and sisters, mothers and fathers, divine kin bound in story. In their myths, planets and constellations were not distant objects but relatives in a cosmic household. To them, the sky was not an empty backdrop, but a gathering place of kin, alive with presence and meaning. The story expands into how modern science reframes, but does not erase this kinship. Today we know stars are vast furnaces of hydrogen. Planets are worlds of stone and gas. Galaxies are islands of light scattered across billions of years. And yet, we too speak of star families, stellar nurseries, cosmic ancestry. We say that every atom in our bodies was forged in stars, that we are made of their dust. In this way, myth and science converge. The Sumerians were not wrong to call the stars their relatives. They were, and they are. The narration deepens into reflection on continuity. The same moon that guided Sumerian farmers lights our nights. The same Venus that shone as Inanna still burns brightly at dawn. The same constellations that guided their myths stretch across our skies. Though we live in a world of telescopes and space probes, the emotional truth is unchanged. The sky above us is a shared inheritance, an unbroken thread connecting us with the first stargazers. The section reflects on the human longing for connection. To call the stars kin is to soothe loneliness. In the great silence of the universe, kinship offers comfort. We are not abandoned in an indifferent cosmos. We are participants in a family story that began before us and will continue long after us. The Sumerians knew this instinctively, and though their myths were clothed in gods and omens, the heart of their vision remains universal. The heavens are not strangers. They are home. The narrative broadens into the passage of time. Civilizations rise and fall, but the stars endure. Stories are forgotten and rediscovered, but the night sky remains unchanged. Each generation remakes the cosmos in its own image. The Sumerians with their gods, the Babylonians with their omens, we with our physics and telescopes. Yet beneath the differences lies the same gesture: to look upward and wonder, to seek meaning in the infinite, to find kinship in what is vast. The section closes in stillness. The stars that watched over the Sumerians still shine above us. They will shine long after we are gone. And perhaps, in the deep future, when another civilization gazes upward, they too will feel what the Sumerians once felt, that the lights above are not cold or distant, but family. The stars remain our kin forever. The section begins with a reflection on endings. The Sumerians, once so vibrant, are silent. Their cities are ruins, their voices lost to time, their myths scattered like dust in the desert wind. And yet, their vision of the stars as family remains, carried not only in history books, but in the quiet instincts of every human who looks upward. The narration moves into the idea of silence as a presence, not an absence. For the Sumerians, silence was never empty. It was the space where God spoke, where omens revealed themselves, where stars burned with meaning. Today, we experience silence differently. As the background hum of space, the unspoken expanse between galaxies, the long waiting of time. Yet the feeling is the same. Silence is the breath of the universe, a gentle reminder of our smallness and our belonging. The story expands into cosmic scale. Stars live for billions of years, burning, fading, collapsing, giving birth to new stars in endless cycles. Civilizations are brief sparks by comparison. The Sumerians lasted only a few thousand years, a moment in cosmic time. We too will pass, but the stars, vast and patient, endure, carrying forward the memory of all who look to them. The narration deepens into intimacy. In the quiet of night, when distractions fade and the world is still, the silence between stars becomes a lullaby. It asks us to rest, to breathe, to surrender to the rhythms of time larger than our own. The Sumerians once found comfort in that silence, and so can we. To sleep beneath the stars is to sleep within the oldest embrace of all. The section reflects on continuity beyond words. When myths fade, when names are forgotten, silence holds what cannot be spoken. The stars do not need our stories to shine. They are there regardless, patient guardians of time, bearing witness to all beginnings and all endings. Our words may vanish, but the silence of the cosmos endures, holding space for every memory, every voice, every dream. The narrative broadens into universality. Across the world, across cultures, across ages, humans return to the night sky. Children learn their first sense of wonder from it. Elders gaze upward and remember. Even when we have no words, the silence of the stars speaks for us. It is a universal inheritance, a language older than language itself. The section closes as a gentle descent, like the final exhalation before sleep. Between stars, there is silence, and within silence, there is peace. The Sumerians are gone, but the silence they once listened to remains unchanged. And in that silence, we too can rest, as if lying within the great cosmic family, as if the stars themselves were watching over us, whispering us to sleep. This section begins with a return to the individual, the listener lying in bed, breathing, listening. The narration acknowledges them softly. Just as the Sumerians once lifted their eyes to the sky, so do you. The same atoms that burned in their fires, that shaped their tools, that carved their tablets, flow within you now. You are not separate from them, nor from the stars. The narration moves into kinship at the most intimate level. Every breath you take contains molecules once exhaled by ancient forests, once carried by winds across deserts where Sumerian temples stood. Every drop of water in your body once cycled through oceans older than civilization itself. And every atom in your flesh was forged in the heart of a star. You carry within you the same stardust the Sumerians called family. The story expands into continuity across time. Just as they dreamed beneath the stars, you too dream beneath them now. Just as they sought meaning, so do you. In this way, there is no separation between past and present, between myth and science, between them and you. Their silence is within you. Their stories flow into your own heartbeat. The narration deepens into reflection on sleep as an inheritance. When you close your eyes, You enter the same mystery the Sumerians once entered each night, the descent into darkness, the surrender to dream. For them, dreams were messages from the gods, whispers from beyond. For us, they are woven from memory and imagination. But in both, sleep connects us to something larger, something infinite. The section reflects on the idea of belonging. You are not alone beneath the night sky. You are part of a family that stretches across civilizations, across millennia, across galaxies. You are woven into the same story, held in the same silence, embraced by the same stars. To remember this is to find comfort. To rest in this knowledge is to sleep peacefully. The narrative broadens into universality. The Sumerians are gone, but you remain. One day, you too will be gone, but others will remain. The stars will shine above them as they shine above you. Each life is brief, but the connection is endless, a chain of kinship unbroken across time. The section closes with stillness. You are made of stars. You are made of story. You are made of silence. The Sumerians once spoke of stars as family, and they were right. As you drift into sleep, you too return to that family, to the silence between stars, to the story that never ends, to the kinship that holds you in its infinite embrace. Before Sumer, before temples rose along riverbanks, before words were etched into clay, there was a single human who looked upward. No one knows their name. No one remembers their face. They stood in silence, perhaps on a hill, perhaps beside a fire. The night was clear, and above them the sky opened wide with 1,000 burning lights. In that moment, they became the first stargazer. The first stargazer did not know what those lights were. They did not know of galaxies, or of gravity, or of nuclear fires burning in the void. But they felt something we still feel, a pull, a wonder, a recognition. The stars were not cold to them. They were alive, companions, family. In their upward gaze began the long dream of humanity. That dream was carried forward, woven into myth, into story, into memory. The Sumerians gave the stars names, gave them voices, gave them homes in the sky. They mapped their movements, spoke of them as kin, and trusted them to hold secrets about time and fate. In every star they saw both mystery and comfort. And in those stories we find the inheritance of that first gaze. Yet the stargazer is not lost to time. They are alive in you. Every time you look up at the night sky and feel wonder, you are standing beside them. Every time you sense the immensity above you, the hush that comes with looking at infinity, you share their breath, their silence, their awe. Across thousands of years, you are not separate. You are the same dreamer, continuing the same gaze. The Sumerians, too, are with you. When you imagine the stars as a family, you echo their hymns. When you search for meaning in constellations, you echo their maps. When you close your eyes tonight and drift towards sleep, you echo their belief that dreams are whispers from beyond, messages from the same stars that watched over them. Sleep itself becomes a continuation of the Sumerian sky. Dreams have always been companions of the night sky. For the Sumerians, they were messages from gods. For us, they are patterns born of memory, emotion, imagination. But perhaps both are true. Perhaps every dream is a thread woven from within and beyond, a meeting place between the silence of the stars and the silence of our own minds. To fall asleep is to join the chain of dreamers stretching back to the very first stargazer. As your breathing slows, as your body sinks deeper into rest, you step into that chain. The constellations of your own mind begin to shine, as vivid and mysterious as those in the sky. The stars above burn far away, but your dreams unfold close within, like hidden galaxies waiting to be explored. Just as the Sumerians once trusted the night to guide them, you can trust the night to hold you, to carry you into peace. And so the dream of the first stargazer becomes your dream. Their wonder lives on in your heartbeat. Their silence lives on in your breath. Their awe lives on in your thoughts as they dissolve into sleep. What they saw above them, you see above you. What they felt, you feel now. The stars have not changed, and the dream has not ended. Rest now. The first stargazer dreamed, and the Sumerians dreamed, and now it is your turn to dream. The stars remain patient and eternal, waiting above you as they have always waited. They are family, guardians, companions, kin. Let their silence hold you. Let their light guide you. Drift into the dream they began. You are part of their story, and their story is part of you. Close your eyes. Breathe softly. The stars are still there. The dream continues. Sleep.